Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for being here, and we welcome you to the hearing of the Arts, Entertainment, Sports, Tourism, and Internet Media Committee. We have a quorum. Some of our members will hopefully be en route, a couple of them, but today we're going to hear a SB 1361, and I'd like to call up Senator Corbett. I'm sorry. And we're going to do the roll. I'm going to ask the clerk to.
Davis.
Here.
Silva.
Here.
Blumenfield.
Present.
Calderon. De Leon. Gaines.
Here.
Gatto.
Here.
Monning.
Here.
Strickland.
Okay. We are ready to hear social networking internet websites, minors' privacy, by Senator Corbett. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, members, for giving us the opportunity to have the hearing on this bill. But I also want to thank you because I've had the opportunity over the last couple of weeks and over the weekend to have some great long conversations with my teenage son. And if any of you have a teenager at home, you know it's always great when you have an opportunity where there's something interesting that catches their attention and you can really get into a subject and start thinking about what our younger people are thinking. And also it gave me an opportunity, especially over this weekend, to read as many privacy policies that I wanted to and find out some very interesting things and more about how the Internet actually operates. So thank you for that opportunity, too. This bill, Senate Bill 1361, would protect the privacy of minors who spend time on social networking websites by prohibiting the display of their home address and telephone number. According to a recent study, 42% of teens said they have posted information about themselves on the Internet so others can see it and contact them. More than half say they have they've been asked personal questions online. These are by people that they don't even know. And 1 in 10 children between the ages of 8 and 12 say they communicate with people they do not know online regularly. Senate Bill 1361 is an important step in ensuring that the private information of minors will not be misused for identity theft, by sexual predators, or by any form of unwanted harassment. Under 1361, if a person presents themselves as a minor when registering to create a social network profile, the website may still collect the address or telephone number of that minor, but just can't make that information available to the public at large. The bill does not require verification. The bill, does not require verification and does by the website and or the social network site, and does not hold the website responsible for information a minor might type into their profile after registration. This is just at registration. It also removes social networking websites from liability if a registered user misrepresents themselves and lies about their age. And that actually reflects amendments that we amended into the bill earlier in the process after hearing concerns from the opposition. I'm grateful for the support of Mark Klass, who's here to testify today, and Harriet Salerno from Crime Victims United, our State Sheriff's Association, PORAC, the California Teachers Association, the PTA, the Privacy Rights Clearinghouse, and the Child Abuse Prevention Center, amongst others. I think it's obvious why we have this coalition of people who care about children's safety and law enforcement, that we're asking for something that is very important, that will protect young people, that will just make sure that minors' home addresses and phone numbers are not posted on the Internet. And for those of you who have the opportunity to spend time on the Internet, and I will probably use this diagram a little later, you do know that there are opportunities for young people to put together groups of friends and people that they communicate with on a regular basis. We're trying to stop not necessarily that practice, and we could talk further about that in the hearing today, but that anyone in the entire world may have the opportunity to find the home address of a minor. We'll hear that our most serious situations with regard to predators usually happen when people are on a chat room and they're talking with each other. But why would we allow, after that chat, an opportunity for someone just to put a minor's name, place it in, take a search for it, and be able to find that person's address? Why would we assume that that is a good thing to do? So I have some great witnesses with me today to speak in support, and I hope that you will ask me whatever questions you would like to ask me, and I hope that you can support this bill moving forward to the next step. Mr. Klass, I think, would like to begin.
Mr. Chairman, members, my name is Mark Klass. I'm the president of the Klass Kids Foundation. Senate Bill 1361 is designed to protect naive children when they go online and log on to their social networking profiles. Social networking sites make people feel connected, and those that belong believe that they provide a sense of community. Profiles are about promoting personality, preferences, and causes, and they tend to be the hub of teens' social lives. Most teens use social networking sites to interact with friends from their offline world and to check out possible new friends. It is not the primary means of online communication between individuals. That's what texting is about. They use their cell phones to text. That is where they maintain their primary contact information. There are obvious reasons to be concerned about children's online safety and the children's online safety environment, beside the fact that 42% of teens post personal information online, as the senator mentioned, and that 56% have been asked personal information, and that 10% of tweens talk to people they don't know online. Those would be kids between 8 and 12. We know that at least 90% of all American teens go online. Now, those that oppose SB 1361 claim that the bill will incentivize children to lie about their ages and pose themselves as adults, thereby avoiding age restrictions. The opposition also states that this would undercut teenage social networking site solutions developed by state attorneys general that prevent adults from searching children's profiles. In other words, children are liars who cannot be trusted to do the right thing. I personally don't believe that. I think that the kids deserve more credit than that. I am much more concerned about miscreant adults posing as children than children posing as adults. After all, in California, there are currently no laws at all against the use of social networking internet websites by registered sex offenders. The opposition alludes to all types of dastardly consequences if children's addresses and phone numbers are disallowed online. Phrases like 1361 increases the risk to minors by creating a false sense of security among both minors and parents. I believe this is a misleading statement, and I believe that it has absolutely no basis in fact. We're talking about something very small here. We're not talking about creating any false sense of security. Now, the Facebook privacy policy is typical of that in the industry. They promise not to share private or personal information with third parties unless it is by the court order or for public safety considerations, which is all well and good. However, the next line says it does not apply to entities that Facebook does not own or control, such as applications and websites using their platform. In other words, Farmville. In other words, mafia wars are able to access and mine as much personal and private information as they wish and then do with it as they wish. They can take that information and package it, sell it to data mining organizations who then repackage and resell it to anybody who wants a list of any possible kind. This should, if anything, be an opt-in kind of a situation for young kids. Therefore, the only way to protect children's privacy is to disallow the posting of this kind of information altogether. Now, this is not just about Facebook, MySpace, or other high-profile social networking sites that cater to youth and adult populations. There are literally hundreds of social networking sites that are geared directly towards teen activities. There are sites like school sites. There are sites like gaming sites. There are certain music sites that specifically look at young kids, and I think that these can all be dealt with. If kids aren't able to post their profile information on these sites, then we're not really dealing with the age restrictions at all, because these are geared towards the kids. SB 1361 is small legislation that takes a baby step towards protecting kids online. It limits risk for the vast majority of law-abiding kids who want to avoid risk. Recent experience has demonstrated that industrial self-policing is a travesty. Let's not allow this most unregulated and powerful industry to let greed cloud its judgment and create dangerous situations for our kids. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Klaus.
Mr. Chair and members,
Yes, ma'am.
I will be brief. I'm Harriet Salerno. I'm chair of Crime Victims United. Millions of California children who use the internet every day are at risk from sexual predators. While the internet is one of the most helpful technology inventions of this century, it has also provided an alternative avenue for predators to victimize unsuspecting youth. Child predators in particular are moving from the playground to the World Wide Web in their search for unsuspecting children. As such, parents continue to face growing challenges to protect their children from the opportunities of this technology wonder provides to predators. CVUC applauds Senator Corbett in her efforts to pass SB 1361 as an important step in limiting the ability for predators to continue victimizing our young family and friends and causing terror in California communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm Nick Warner on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association. I represent all 58 elected sheriffs. I also want to thank Senator Corbett for introducing this bill because, frankly, it spurred a lot of healthy, detailed debate in the communities that I travel in law enforcement, especially among some of the high-tech crimes units. And without question, the sheriffs view this bill as credible, view it as a step forward. And I want to take a couple of the arguments just briefly listed in the analysis. It does a great job fleshing out the opposition, and just take the first argument that's made is it addresses a problem which has not been shown to exist. And I would just submit to you, victims groups, educators, and law enforcement are telling you the problem does exist. Secondly, the analysis points out the opposition says this undermines our safeguards, and I would just point out to you we're questioning the safeguards and recommending a solution to enhance those safeguards. For those reasons, we urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Dawn Kepke with McEwen Associates on behalf of the Child Abuse Prevention Center, also in strong support for the reasons already stated. We certainly don't think that this is the end of the conversation, but this is the first step and a great tool, an important tool to start with. This information, we believe, should not ever be posted for minors. This is an important privacy protection, and no reason should this information be able to be posted for any purpose online. So for those reasons, we support. Thanks.
Okay, so any other witnesses in support, and then we'll do questions from our members.
Tony Triguero on behalf of the California Teachers Association. We're honored to be here and to thank the author for her hard work on this issue. Thank you.
Okay. Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none. Members, any questions? Let me first ask the Sheriff's Department. You mentioned, in fact, that this is truly a real problem today. Is there any data or any salient facts with regard to the numbers of children who have been victim of their addresses being posted on the internet? And
good question. I appreciate you asking it. I think part of the reason that we don't have a lot of quantifiable data is that the social networking sites are just starting to burgeon now. We're just starting to see more use. We're starting to see more abuse because folks are starting to figure out how to pick them apart. And so I know it's a little bit dramatic to say to you, there's going to be a bigger problem. Mm-hmm. Fix it before it becomes a problem. I can remember years ago we were telling the legislature we've got an issue with workers' comp and inmates abusing this minimum temporary disability section, and the legislature said, well, quantify the loss. We can't yet, but give us 3 years, and I guarantee you we'll come back to this committee with a bunch of names. Sure. So we're just starting to see the technology really be used by so many kids that we're identifying, yeah, these are real cracks in the system. And so as we send this out to our high-tech units and we send it out to the sheriff to say, is this a real problem and is this a viable solution? The answer is yes and yes.
Have we had any specific notable incidences of the internet in particular having been used against, crimes that have occurred with kids in our state?
Absolutely. Short answer is yes. I don't have I don't have aggregated data for you. We probably could get that. It'd probably be relatively small. And I think one of the things that Senator Corbett's to be commended for is this bill's, I don't know if it's ahead of its time, but it's at least keeping up with the power curve. We're just at the point now where we're starting to see significant abuse. So unfortunately, I suspect I'll be able to come back to this committee in a year or two and give you more data, more names, but we're hoping to stem the tide of that in a proactive way.
Mr. Chairman, there was a very popular television program called To Catch a Predator that was all about online abuse of children via the internet, and it ran for a couple of seasons.
And also, Mr. Chair, in your analysis, there is also a reference to Kayla Reed, who was an active user of MySpace, and we all know the tragic circumstances around her death as well. And there are countless stories. I had the opportunity, a couple of opportunities. Obviously, I've been talking to my local law enforcement about this, and my local law enforcement, in turn, worked with the state associations also to ensure that we would have strong support for this bill. I had an opportunity to meet with my local sheriff, Greg Ahern from Alameda County, just on Friday, and he again encouraged me to be strong on this measure because they do have situations all the time where young people are contacted because of their internet use, whether it be through chat rooms or other means where they do end up being victims of crime. I had an opportunity to speak to my district attorney this morning from Alameda County, Nancy O'Malley, and she cited a study to me that 72% of children who use the internet are 72% more likely to be victims of sexual predators and or human trafficking. So there are actually even special units within our police departments, our sheriff's departments, and our district attorney's offices to track this type of crime. There's many cases and circumstances that we could point to. And again, if we just boil this down to what the bill does, it basically says the whole wide world will not be able to enter a minor's name from their desktop or their laptop and find out exactly where they live so they can end up on their doorstep. That's what we're trying to do. It's not a big major program to make people make major changes to their software, the way they operate their social networking sites, or to require keeping lists. You've seen some other pieces of legislation moving this year in the legislature that are currently parked in the Appropriations Committee. But this bill in particular just says the whole wide world cannot find that person. And let me just call your attention to this simple chart that this is probably oversimplified, but if you could just take a look at it. The minor, of course, is the person in the middle. And once their information is posted on their profile, and just that one time, we're not protecting against any other postings, anybody except in the case where Facebook actually does have protections. There are some protections out there. But what we're trying to prevent is this circle, the individual minor, not being able to be, their address not being able to be found by the entire web, the entire world being able to find that person. There are protections and there are limitations that some social network sites use to protect them, but we are trying to prevent that sort of contact by those that don't do that, or parallel what's being done in the industry. So again, just think about it. You might know your friends, if we just take it out of the internet context, you're probably fine with your children spending time with their friends in their neighborhood, but are you fine with someone from the other side of the world being able to track down your young person? That's really the question you need to ask yourself on this.
Mr. Vice Chair, you had a question for this panel? Okay. We have witness. Oh, yes, Mr. Gatto.
So I'd like to take this out of the internet context for a second. I know such analogies are never perfect, but it's what a lot of us have experience with. So when I was a kid, I used to order these Boy Scouts catalogs, and I would put my address in there, and I was 12 years old. And there were various. So I liken this to the application users. So there are 200,000 applications in Facebook. There are 200,000, you said Farmville Mafia Wars, which I hate. and for obvious reasons. And certain other certain other applications, which are businesses that do business all across the United States. And I liken them to like the Boy Scouts catalog that I got when I was a 12-year-old. Then there is an aggregator, something like when I was a kid, it was Boys Life magazine, and they would collect all, if you're interested in pocket knives, if you're interested in bows and arrows, you would, sort of give them your address and they'd distribute it. So I guess my question is a legal one, and I'll throw it up to the lawyers or anybody who can answer this, and that is, does California have the authority to specify that these businesses, which do business nationwide, and in many cases have a bona fide reason to collect an address, does California and do all the rest of the 50 states have the authority to prohibit them from typing in their address and using the mail, which is a tool of interstate commerce, just within the boundaries of our state?
Yes. Well, first of all, just to make this clear, and when you and I had a conversation earlier, I think I might not have been clear on it. The bill does not prohibit the ability for somebody to type in the information. I know that we talked about it a little bit differently when I last talked to you. It just prohibits the ability for that information to be posted publicly. So if you just think about it, the young person could sit down at the computer, open up we'll use Facebook. When they want to start a Facebook page, they can open up to the profile and they can type in, their name, their address, their school, their likes, their dislikes. They can put all that information in. But we're just saying if that person is a minor, their home address and phone number is not going to be displayed to the whole wide world. And in your analogy, I'm sure that the people at, Boys Life and the Boy Scouts magazines never in our wildest imaginations, just factually, they didn't share that information with the whole wide world. Right.
They do. They sell the data. Sure.
Well, they sell the data, but they probably didn't have the ability of anybody in the whole wide world just sitting down at their desk and accessing it. So, there was a little more control over that information than this piece of information that could escape to anybody who happened to look it up.
Mr. Blumenfield, followed by Mr. Monty.
Okay. Thank you very much for bringing this. I have tremendous respect for the author. I do have a number of concerns about the bill, and we've talked about some of them. I mean, just for starters, when we're talking about social networking as a tool for predators, I think it's also important to say social networking is an incredible tool for kids to grow and expand and reach out to the world. I mean, one of the things that's so amazing about it is you can have a kid in the center of this diagram reaching out to China to talk to someone else about how the government works there, and they can actually have all this context. So there's a lot of costs and benefits here, and clearly we want to do everything we can to protect kids. I do believe, however, if we the argument I know was somewhat dismissed, but if we tell kids that they can't use this feature, which is using the profile of their friends to click on the phone number, which is a great feature. I use it as well. I mean, you just click on the person's profile, click the phone number, and you do it. I do think a lot of kids will then very easily figure out a workaround, either post their phone number or lie about their age. And the danger of that, of course, is if they lie about their age, then they're outside of the protected zone of a lot of these social networking sites, which they're not searchable. I agree with you. The biggest problem, the scariest thing to me about kids is if predators out there can just sort of dial up a child and, I want a 14-year-old this age within this region. But some of the current safety features on a number of the social networking sites prevent that from happening. They don't allow you to search a child unless you're in their network and you've agreed to be their friend. So for me, it would be really important that this bill be limited and not take in sites that have taken precautions to not do things that would disincentivize or that would incentivize kids to lie about their age and then be free from the protections. And we talked about some possibilities of that, and I'd like you to share that, and if you're willing to take some of those changes that might make this more comfortable for me to support.
Well,
because in its current form, I have a lot of problems.
Thank you. Well, first of all, to address the issue of exempting one social network site over the other.
Let me be clear also.
You're not asking for that.
I'm not asking for that
Okay,
in any way, shape, or form.
That would be pretty difficult to do.
Yeah, no. All I'm saying is if a site has already prevented the searchability of children in some and has a protected zone, and they're only displaying their information to people within their zone, then to me it's not nearly the same problem. So in terms of exemptions, I would want to have the bill in some way not take in, and I think you have a solution for that.
I think.
Not take in those kids, but it's not one site in particular or
Right.
any series of sites.
I think the better way to deal with that issue is not in terms of calling it an exemption, but in allowing the type of access that would still protect the young person that might parallel some of the good things that are being done on the internet. So for an example, in this circle, again, we want to prevent the ability for just any person who might do harm to this minor from being able to reach them. I understand that one social network site does have a process where people are minors. Their information is not posted right now. However, a person within that minor's circle of friends, that first circle, that minor circle of friends, which that minor has identified as their friends, does have the ability to find the phone number of those. So although I'm not totally comfortable with that, because I do understand that, friends list sometimes may include people that aren't friends, and I think we could probably find some cases where we could show you some terrible criminal activity where people end up on people's friends lists or friends of friends lists. I think that might be something that we could take a look at because, again, the main point of this bill is to just make sure that sexual predators and others that would do harm, that have no business having the home address of these minors, are not able to access that information. So I would be willing to talk about the idea of allowing friends to be able to use the click-on feature, as you call it. So it would be a totally, controlled network, right? So it wouldn't be, there wouldn't be the ability for a stranger to find this person. I'd have to talk about it and make sure that, it works. But I would be glad to work with you on that, because I think that also addresses an issue that others have raised, that people may try to avoid the protections because they want to access the phone numbers. Now, I have to say I agree with Mr. Klass. I just don't believe all teenagers are going to lie to do that. But it is something we could take a look at, but I want to make sure that it was very secure. Is it possible? Is it doable? I think it is, because I do believe one social network site now allows for blocking the information being made to the public, but at the same time allows for friends within the circle identified by that minor to be able to have access to the phone numbers, as you have been mentioning, the click-on feature, as you call it. But we'd have to also, I'm sort of talking about it in the terms of one particular social network site. We'd have to sort of see how that works for others.
Mr. Marning, followed by Mrs. Strickland.
May I make a quick point? Sir, I believe the safety the safety initiative that you're talking about is a very well-meaning effort by MySpace a couple of years ago to work with the attorneys general to protect children online. But in terms of the internet, 2 years is ancient history. And really, every so often, we have to go back and we have to enhance the kinds of protections that already exist to ensure that they continue to protect the population that they were created to protect, and that's exactly what this piece of legislation does.
Yeah, I wasn't referring to something particular in MySpace. I was referring to just the idea that if you're already in someone's friend network, that sort of these limitations wouldn't apply, so that you can't search someone unless you get their information if you're outside of the network and get their name, but you can't find out their age. So if you're already in, a friend on Facebook or something, this doesn't apply. But if you're outside of that, in one of these other circles, then you would not have access.
And Mr.
Ms.
Blumenfeld, I'm sorry. Mr. Blumenfeld, I believe that I would also need to have the opportunity to talk to those in law enforcement to see whether that truly would still preserve the protection for the minors. But I'm willing to take a look at it to see if it's workable. But if it blows open a huge hole and really creates a scenario where the people who I'm trying to protect these minors from still have the ability to access them, I wouldn't be so interested. But I'd be glad to take a look at it and see if there is a way to do it and see if it is working right now with some of the, at least one social network site I know that uses it, but I'd have to consider that as well.
Okay, Mr. Monning, followed by Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to thank the author for bringing this forward. I'm 100% in agreement with the objectives, protecting children, and I'm sure I speak for everybody on this committee and everybody in this legislature. The balancing act that we face is not in the effort to create greater protection. We do incentivize young people to find ways to, say, still access that convenience of getting friends' phone numbers, and in essence, an unintended consequence of making them more susceptible because they go outside the system or they lie about their age. And while I have great respect for young people, I also know that if one child figures out a way to kind of beat the system if they think it's in their self-interest, peer pressure will catalyze that happening among others. What I think is very useful about this chart in discussing finding a proper balance, if we vest that confidence in young people to protect, to allow friends in who they want to be a friend and allow those friends to have access to their phone number because they can use that to trigger their cell phone, which most of the kids also have, and that if they lose that convenience, they're going to post it in other ways. So I think the real protection we seek is that somebody can't just go on the internet and get to this information that a child posts on their website, on their social network service, whatever that might be. I'm familiar with Facebook. I know there's others. So using the Facebook example, but I use this not to carve an exception for them, rather to set a standard. If there were the ability of the user, the child, to let people in and therefore have access to certain information while creating a barrier to somebody who's just surfing the net, who hasn't established this authorization from the owner of the site, that you create that barrier of impenetrability. And in your sketch, that would be the entire web and maybe general social networking users, but the inner circle and the next circle out. And then this friends of friends creates maybe a gray area. I think you would want it to be authorized by the owner of the site. The other thing, and I profess my ignorance here, when these profiles are developed, making entry of an address and a phone number optional, not required fields, with maybe some alert to young people, you have a choice here. And you don't have to provide your home address. You don't have to provide your phone number. So there's the right not to post it. And even if you do post it, it's protected only among those that you've let into your circle of friends. There'll still be a potential for abuse. Somebody lets in somebody, they don't know who they are. I don't think there's the perfect mousetrap. My fear is if you close it down totally, young people are going to go outside the existing protections to make themselves potentially more susceptible by just putting it up on chats, putting it up on something that is available to any web user. So we want to discourage that as well. So I would be interested in working on the refinement of this that protects the owner of the site, the user of it, to allow access and to have the opportunity but not the requirement of posting a phone number, for example. So Again, I think we haven't yet heard from the opposition. I'd be curious to hear some of their reactions to these different filters, some of which I know already exist.
Yes.
And would like to work with you in achieving the goal of providing maximum protection to minors and young people. I know this is headed to judiciary. I want to hear the responses of opposition today.
Yes.
If it does go to judiciary, I would look forward to some further work on maybe how you would articulate creating the protection without creating an unwitting incentive for young people to go more open on the open web.
Ms. Strickland, followed by the witnesses in opposition.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I respond just for a moment?
Briefly, yes.
Just in one of the comments that you made with regard to posting the information, it's my understanding in most cases that information is optional now. So again, if there are young people who, know that it might put them at risk to post that information, we encourage that. When I had one of those long conversations with my son, he said, "Mom, I don't put my phone number on that. I don't put my address on that. My friends know how to find me, and we keep all our information in our contacts and our phones." So that is the case. Young people can figure out ways to protect themselves. But this is to help those who inadvertently post that information, either because they just innocently are filling out a form, or two, they really don't understand the consequences of allowing that information to, escape to that outer world. And in fact, in many cases, they probably don't really understand that they are consenting to the fact that their information is now going to be available to others in some sites.
Thank you. And
Not all
just to be clear, you're okay with exempting services that would provide that filter that doesn't let the posted information get out to the World Wide Web
I
to
don't
any user?
think the word exempting certain entities works well for workability. I think crafting a bill that said information cannot be posted to the outside world, and perhaps what I would consider would be looking at allowing for information to be posted and available to a secure group, like the Friends model, perhaps, which is similar to the Facebook model. Again, not to call out Facebook, but it's the one that I'm most familiar with as well. So to consider if the security is available that I'm trying to seek, perhaps allowing that information to be available, thereby dealing with the incentive that many of you are concerned about, where kids would avoid the system. So it wouldn't be an exemption, but it would be allowing information to be available in a circle of, a secure circle of some sort.
Authorized friends or
Something like that. Yes, yes.
Thank you.
But exempting a group because
no.
you don't really know, that would be very hard to manage. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, Senator. I have 2 young children who don't yet use the internet, but obviously as a parent, this is a big concern, and I did used to watch Catch a Predator, and it's a very scary world out there. And I think as parents and law enforcement know, my concern and fear really is that the law always lags behind technology and the deviance and depravity of man, and that this bill might not necessarily accomplish entirely what you're trying to do. So to that end, I guess I just have a couple of questions. Does your bill prohibit a minor from posting any information other places on a social networking site aside from at the time of registration?
I deliberately chose to deal with a very small part of the internet. As you know, the internet is huge and vast and beyond anything. It's infinity as far as I'm concerned. I did not choose to prohibit that sort of posting. It would be very difficult to say a young person can't say what they want to say. We would run into constitutional problems, and then I wouldn't have any law at all. So I very specifically and intentionally did not address that area. Do I not like the fact that a young person might be able to post information on a wall or somewhere else where a predator might find them? No, of course, absolutely, no way. However, this bill intentionally focuses on the initial profile information posted and blocks that from being made available. Because again, the point is a young person may enter that information not realizing that they're consenting to have their information made available to the world. Now, when they post it on their wall or send a message to someone, they consciously understand they're sending it to someone. Is it a good idea in many cases? Probably not. But at least they know that they're doing it. So this, any questions about is that going to protect them because they're going to do something else? Well, it only protects this situation, and that is the non-posting of the information on the profile.
Does your bill require all social networking sites to solicit the age of the user?
This only addresses situations where young people have self-identified themselves as minors, and that was an amendment that we took in the bill because of the discussions we had early on with the tech folks. That was something they were concerned about, because if there was someone who lied about their age, how would they then know whether they in fact were a minor or not? And in fact, probably, I can't say most, but probably most network sites deal with self-identification because that's the information they have available to them. And so we just parallel that.
Are you at all concerned that the reaction to your bill might be social networking sites eliminating any type of age disclosure by a user whatsoever in order to avoid the provisions of your bill?
No, I don't think they'll do that because I think they have a conscience, and I think they care about young people too, and they care that people want to see that there's protections on these sites. People ask for those sorts of protections.
But the sites that are not offering those protections now would be able to escape the provisions of your bill entirely. But
yeah, and isn't that too bad? I wish I could control that, but I can't.
Okay. You had said that you are trying to parallel what's in the industry, referring to Facebook, saying that it has stronger policies for protection of others, but your bill doesn't mandate or set forth a policy that's in any way similar to Facebook's policies, but rather entirely different restrictions. So I'm not exactly, maybe you can, in your close, explain that a little bit.
Well, I can do that right now. I set out to make sure that we don't have posting of home addresses. In my discussions with some of the members of the committee, they have pointed out that there are other safeguards that network sites use, and would I take a look at making sure that those aren't evaded. And so when I reference that I'd be glad to take a look and see what's being done, that's what I'm referencing.
What, in your mind, is a parent's role in supervising a minor's internet use?
I think that, I have a teenager. I think it's very important that we help our children understand the fact that they may inadvertently have an innocent conversation with someone that and or post information that might make it so that they are at risk. So we should educate our young people. We have the opportunity to, of course, let them know when and when they can't use the internet. We have the opportunity also to help teach them about security features. But the problem is, as I'm sure you know with your own young children, sometimes they're able to do things or do things you ask them not to do. So obviously parents should be very involved. And in fact, parents should be very involved in advocating for security. That's why the PTA is supporting this bill. The PTA is supporting this bill because parents are very involved in being concerned about the security of their children on the internet. So that's a role they should take as well.
And obviously, I think it's very important that that a parent be as active as you described in order to avoid this type of thing. My concern is that children are indeed very clever and use technology better than their parents do, and that I am concerned that there are plenty of children who would skirt whatever intended policy protections that your bill would set up as a way to be able to still access their friends' information and then unwittingly expose themselves to others. I would also be concerned that your bill would reward people for dropping any type of age disclosure by a user altogether. Now you have no penalties under this bill. Now there are no repercussions whatsoever legally in that you now have no obligation whatsoever.
I don't think that's going to happen, though. I'll give you an example. MySpace has some very serious rules as well with regard to where minors can access information. And not only do they do that, prohibit minors from even accessing certain parts of their site, they run algorithms where they actually track communications. In other words, someone might identify themselves as 50 years old, but they run these algorithms and actually track the discussions so that if there is obviously a young person talking about going to the prom, they have the opportunity to then send a notice and let that person know that they may be totally blocked from using the site whatsoever because they've lied about their age. So the high-tech
my
folks...
point is just how horrible would that be if that protection no longer existed? And really that's my concern, Mr. Chair, about the bill, is that it really, I believe, would be quite workable when put into action, and I think would further jeopardize the safety of our children as these industries attempt to compete in this marketplace in California, and I would be very concerned that as a parent who is not actively involved in the supervision of their child's internet use would open themselves up to way more exposure to the rest of the world because of this bill. And so I appreciate what the author's trying to do. I just don't see this bill as getting to what she's trying to do, what's intended. Thanks.
Okay. Witnesses in opposition.
Now the fun part, I guess.
Are there any?
You can stay. You stay. Hi. Where's everybody else?
They're coming.
You guys usually travel in packs.
Hi, Mr. Chair and members, Tim Valderrama on behalf of TechNet. I want to start by clearly saying that we absolutely support the Senator's goal in protecting kids online. We unfortunately are in the position of having to oppose this bill today, and it's basically for a lot of the arguments that have already been made, but we think that the bill would be counterproductive. At TechNet, we have a long-standing belief, basically, that the Internet and the growth of the Internet depends wholly upon consumer confidence. When bad things happen on the Internet, that's bad, for society in general, but it's also bad for our companies on a business sense. I want to emphasize that point just by saying that our companies work very hard with schools, with law enforcement, with nonprofits, and others to really do a good job educating people of all ages how to use the Internet safely. In addition, we've worked to develop and we've publicly supported measures that go after people who are acting in a nefarious way on the Internet. And this isn't just only the right thing to do, but it's something that our companies take very seriously. I think the analysis of this bill points out that a really effective way to prohibit bad behavior on the Internet is to purge sex offenders from social networking websites. Unfortunately, when someone's convicted of a sex offense in California, even against a minor, they currently do not have a requirement to register their email addresses or any of their independent computer identifiers with the state. So as a result, what we have is basically a situation where even if a company has access to the Internet Registry of Sex Offenders, they can only run by name. And in a lot of those instances, it turns up 50 or 60 different people that have the same name as a given sex offender. So I'd just like to say publicly here that if Senator Corbett or other members of the legislature would like to work on that issue and really get at the heart of this problem, that you'll see industry and myself at the table to do that. Social networking sites, and this has been discussed a little bit, they have a host of security measures, and our companies in particular, they have a host of security measures that take effect once somebody has identified themselves as a minor. Restrictions on adults' ability to search for minors, limits on minors' ability to share their information with anyone other than confirmed friends, and there's also a lot of additional steps in friend verification process for minors. So as was kind of discussed, and I think that there's a document floating around that we haven't seen yet, but it looks like
Looks just like what was on the front page of the Mercury News on Sunday.
Okay. I'm sorry that I missed that. So so what I'm saying is basically, as is indicated, I think, in that document, random strangers with all our companies that have interest in the bill are already prohibited from searching minors by name and seeing their personal information. So these safety measures and a host of others that have been, kind of, proven effective at helping minors stay protected online, they rely upon accurate self-reporting of age, as we've already discussed. We believe that the loss of functionality associated with this bill basically creates the incentive for two things, and that is either to misrepresent your age and then circumvent the intent of the bill and all the privacy protections that are in place for the minors, or it would cause a minor to basically, and I think this may be more likely, to just post the information somewhere else on their page that is potentially less protected. So having said that, I just want to restate my commitment to work on ways to keep kids safe online that really do work for people, and that's it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I apologize for having my back to you. I'm not sure I can quite reach around there. My name is Stacy Rumenap, and I'm the president of a child advocacy organization named Stop Child Predators. And I've met with a lot of you, but just for those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, very briefly, we're an organization that combats the sexual exploitation of children. And we do that through coalitions, through work with law enforcement, victims, teachers, parents, lawmakers themselves. And we really work to try to put into place protections for children to prevent themselves from hurting themselves or being harmed by sexual predators, both offline and online. And here in California, we worked in 2006 on Jessica's Law, looking at tougher penalties for sex offenses committed against children in the real world. We have been very outspoken in support of Chelsea's Law here in California. So we have a working relationship, and we're looking forward to continuing that working relationship and working with Senator Corbett, for whom we greatly appreciate your efforts in this arena and all you're trying to do. Our organization is working with groups like the Family Online Safety Institute, Internet Keep Safe Coalition, Enough is Enough, Connect Safely, and Look Both Ways Foundation. And these are child advocacy organizations that are national, that focus on states, and they share some of our concerns, because while we're supportive of the intent of this bill, we are concerned that we're just not quite getting to where we're trying to get. And I had last week when I was in town, I had the opportunity to meet with Senator Corbett, and she asked a really great question, and that was, what are the reasons to have this information posted? And there are a couple of actually good reasons. A lot of them have been talked about by the committee, and I don't want to go on too long. But while not all kids use their mobile device just to share contact information, some do. Some of them store information in their cell phones. Their closest friends, for sure, they have that information in their cell phone. But not everyone. If you're a member of a soccer team or something related to your school or an after-school program, a youth program, a church program, so many programs, you may not store all of that contact information for all of those people, even though you know them, even though you're friendly with them, in your phone. And so we know that kids are going onto Facebook and other sites, whether it's a school social networking site or others, to reach out to that person with a click of a button, as opposed to storing their information in their cell phone. And we're concerned the way this bill is written, while not the intent, what happens to those other social networking sites? Are they somehow responsible? Are they somehow having to be shut down because they store that information and because they allow teens to share that information?